What we've got here is a 1997 Ford F-250 with a 7.3 diesel. The problem I'm having with it is the starter doesn't always want to engage. You can hear it click like the solenoid's trying, but I'm pretty sure the solenoid's going out. So we're going to replace the starter on this, and we're also going to look into an oil leak that has developed somewhere around the starter area. Now usually I like to degrease my cars, motors, transmissions, whatever I'm working on. I'll get in there with a can of degreaser, spray bottle degreaser, whatever you want to use, spray it down, get it nice and clean, so that I'm not getting my hands just full of grease and gunk. But since we've got an oil leak we're going to look into, we don't want to clean it nice and shiny. We want to leave all that stuff there so we can figure out where the oil is coming from. So let's get this thing opened up, disconnect the batteries, get the starter out, and see what we can find. Before I disconnect the positive on this battery, I'm going to move over here to the second battery. Since this is a diesel, it has two batteries. Disconnect the negative on this side. You don't have to disconnect both sides of the battery. It's just what I do. So now that the batteries are disconnected, we don't have to worry about sparks flying. We'll go ahead and climb underneath the passenger side of the truck. The starter on the 7.3 is located on the passenger side of the block. Get down there, see what we're going to need to pull the starter out. Put that little piece of plastic down. Light under there. You'll have to excuse the shaky camera because I'm holding it in my hand now. Not a lot of room under here for a tripod, but this is the passenger front tire. We're facing forward. The back of the truck is behind us. Oil pan with a major leak right there, or it could be a minor leak. I haven't been underneath my truck for a while. There's the starter right there. We're going to take the starter out and get a peek up in that dark area in there to see exactly where this oil is coming from. So again, here's your starter. Here's your starter solenoid. This is going to be a positive cable off your battery. That is a 15mm socket. Yes, I deal in metric because everything started going metric in, I believe, the 70s. Talk to your older mechanics and they'll tell you. These are 17mm bolts holding the starter in. Got one right here, pretty easy to get to. Right here. So I got the starter out. We'll give you a closer look at everything. There's the two wires that go to your starter. The positive off your battery, which I believe is a 15mm, and this little wire, which was an 8mm nut. So here's another look at where your starter bolts up. You've got your two bottom bolts down here, and you've got a third bolt right up in here. Now originally I thought that the transmission bolt, there's a bolt that holds the transmission to the motor right here. You get to the head of it back here on this side. I originally thought that that might be holding the starter in, but it does not. 3 separate bolts, one here, 2 down here. They're just for the starter, that hold the starter in. Now this one up top here, you put a 6-inch extension on your ratchet with a deep socket. and you can get to it right above your starter. And looking straight up on the motor, looking for this oil leak, we can see that that's the highest point of oil right there on the cylinder, the side of the cylinder. But it's not going to leak from right there. These are freeze plugs for your antifreeze. I believe the oil's coming from the oil pan gasket. And the fan that's up front that direction, as you're driving down the road, the fan pulls air through the radiator to cool the motor. That fan is blowing a lot of air, and it's kind of forcing the oil to go up the side of the motor. I'm going to tighten these bolts to the oil pan just to make sure they're tight, see if any of them loosened up. But this is nothing that I can do. I can't, not that I can't do an oil pan gasket, but I don't have the right stuff to pull the motor. I believe you have to pull the motor to get the oil pan loose, clean it up, and get it replaced. That's something I'll have to take to a shop and see what they quote me on replacing the oil pan gasket on this motor. Well, pulling the starter wasn't too bad. 3 bolts for the starter, 2 bolts for the wires. It all went pretty easy. Lots of room in there for your hands. It's not like a little compact car that's hard to get into. Pretty simple. The oil leak. 2 of the bolts on the oil pan right above the starter were loose. Now I went ahead and snugged them up. Well, I will say because those bolts were loose, it was probably leaking from there. But it's not going to solve it just tightening the bolts. Usually when you get a leak in a gasket like that, even tightening the bolts up isn't going to solve it. So hopefully it slows it down and I can start saving up money to have that gasket replaced. Since it is an oil pan gasket, you have to pull this motor out of the truck. You can't get to it because it has a big cross member there to, you got to pull the motor. It's just the way it is. You have to pull the motor to do the oil pan gasket. $1,800 to replace that oil pan gasket. That's pulling the motor, replacing the gasket, putting it all back together. Kind of pricey. So go ahead and watch a couple more ads from my YouTube channel and boost that ad revenue for me. Really appreciate it. It could be, there's another possibility, the oil dipstick. It has a big brass nut right there on the side of the oil pan. It could be leaking from there also along with the oil pan gasket. Now that fix, to do it with factory parts, you have to pull the motor, pull the oil pan, get to the inside of it, replace with factory parts. They do sell an aftermarket dipstick, whatever you want to call it, kit. You can get to from the outside. It's $400 and you can put that on from the outside. You don't have to take the motor out or anything. So we'll see how that oil leak continues over the next couple weeks after I get a starter in there. We'll see if it gets worse, see if it gets better, and play it by ear. But enough about that. Let's go down to the auto parts store and get a new starter, get this truck back on the road. Alrighty. Wasn't too bad. Price was $131. Well, $132. And since I already had my old starter out, I didn't have to pay a core. I just put my old starter back in the box. Used the bag I took my starter down there, used it to bring the starter back. If you like this video, you think it's informative, hit that thumbs up button for me. Or click on the share button and share it on your favorite social media. Help our channel grow. We really appreciate all you viewers and all your feedback. If there's something you'd like to see in a video, let me know. Put it down in the comments section. Until next time, go make something.